Hi, I'm Tom from Going Twice, and this is part 3 in our series of videos all about grading and what to consider if you want to upgrade your collection. In part 1, I go over the 3 biggest graders of Pokemon cards in the industry right now: PSA, Beckett, and CGC. In part 2, I go over exactly how those companies grade the cards that you send to them. So by all means, check those videos out in the links below. In this video, we're gonna dive a little bit deeper and talk about how to value your collection, both raw and graded. There's a lot to consider here, and a lot of the times, if you're looking to grade, these are questions you need to be asking yourself, and you need to be able to know how to do your research. Now, when it comes to researching the value of Pokemon cards, we're gonna start with raw cards. This means that the card has not been graded, and this can be the most challenging part. Graded cards at least have a precedent set. The grade is a 7, the grade is an 8, the grade is a 9. It's not up for debate. That is not the case when it comes to raw cards. Near mint to one person might be light play to another, as anyone who has purchased a near mint card off TCG Player will already know. And speaking of TCG Player, it's their definitions that I'll be using as the categories to describe raw card conditions. The reason is TCG Player is one of the largest marketplaces for raw Pokemon cards in the world, so we're going to use their definitions today to talk about the conditions of Pokemon cards. And first up is near mint. Now, with near mint, or NM for short, the card shows minimal wear from play or handling and should have a nearly unmarked surface, clean corners and edges with no whitening. There can be slight edge wear or a few minor scratches, but no major defects. Seems like a pretty straightforward description. However, near mint is the best possible designation for a card that you are selling on TCG Player. Now, the issue with that is the card that I was just showing, this is pack fresh. I would say that this card is actually better than near mint and is in fact a mint card. However, there is no option to list this as a mint card on TCG Player, so near mint would be the best I could do. Someone could be selling the exact same card as me with some scratches, with maybe a tiny little bit of wear on the edges, and technically they're both near mint cards on TCG Player. So that's just something to be aware of if you're buying or selling on that site. Now, a light play card is going to show a bit of wear on the edges or the corners, or potentially both, and have some light minor scuffing or scratching on the surface. Now, there shouldn't be any serious defects like tears, bends, dog ears, anything like that, and the card should still look good. To give you an idea, this card might have a chance of grading a 6, but will most likely come back a 5 or potentially a 4 or 5. And moving on down our list, we go to moderate play, or MP. Now, moderately played cards will definitely be showing some wear both on the edges and the corners. We might see some slight creases in the card as well, and the surface could have some minor to major scuffs or scratches. Now, these scratches and damages, including the creases, should only affect a small portion of the card, and if this card is in a sleeve, it should still be playable in a tournament. Now, whitening is definitely going to be an issue with moderate played cards, potentially around the entire border. This means that you're most likely not going to want to send anything in this condition to go get graded. Now, there are some exceptions. Sometimes it's a card that was special to you in your childhood and you just want to preserve and authenticate it. Other times, cards like Gold Stars or first edition base set sometimes can still be worth grading even in this condition, as they are so rare and it does still preserve them and authenticate them if you ever did want to sell them on the market. Climbing further down the ladder, we go to heavy play, or HP. Now, as you can probably tell by the name, heavily played cards are exactly that. It means that this card has seen a whole lot of loving. This means that it probably was not in a top loader for most of its life. It was likely in a binder or potentially a deck someone was playing with. The edges are going to be considerably beat up, and potentially you will start to see the two pieces of cardboard beginning to potentially separate. It's not quite damaged, and that means that this card in a sleeve can still be playable. However, if you're going to grade it, you're likely going to be looking at a 1 or a 2 and not really anything past that. You're going to see creases that are actually so severe that the integrity of the shape of the card itself is starting to be compromised. A heavily played card is certainly one to put in the binder, but probably not one to put in the slab. And lastly, we get to damaged, or DMG for short. These cards have been so thoroughly destroyed that they are not even playable in a sleeve. The damage could come from a variety of sources. It could be bends, tears, a variety of both, water damage, seen people leave cards in a pocket and then put those jeans through the wash. Either way, a damaged card is not really of any use to you, potentially for your binder collection, but you're not allowed to use it in tournament play, and you certainly shouldn't be sending that card to go get graded. Now, with all that in mind, you can start to have a really close look at your cards and understand where they fall on that scale, which leads us to the next step. How do you research prices for raw cards? Now, there are private and public marketplaces for Pokemon cards within the community, and we're going to be going over the pros and cons of each. Now, the big players in the public sector are going to be eBay, Troll and Toad, and TCG Player. In the private sector, you're going to see Facebook groups, Instagram, and apps such as Whatnot. Now, you're going to want to do your research before you go into the private marketplaces, because otherwise you might not have a good idea of what a fair price for either what you're selling or what you're buying truly is. All right, so now that we've gone over the different conditions of the cards and what to look for when you're looking through your own raw card collection, now we're going to go over the places where you can actually do the research to find out about the prices. And our first stop is going to be TCG Player. Now, TCG Player is what I like to use for raw cards most because it has a very easy to navigate website. It's well organized, and they have almost every English card that you could be looking for. Now, there are a few drawbacks of TCG Player, the first of which is that they do not have any Japanese cards or licensed Pokemon product like Topps, Topsun, Bandai, none of that, as well as no Japanese cards, which is a huge hole in the marketplace for them to be missing. However, when it comes to English cards, they are pretty good. So TCG Player, for this example, we're going to be looking up a Umbreon VMAX alternate art from Evolving Skies. It's one of the most popular modern cards to be released and still commands a very high price considering how long ago that set came out. We're going to be going over sort of the ins and outs of how to use it and the pros and cons. Like I said, the cons, no Japanese versions. However, it does simplify things. So if you have the English version of this card, TCG Player is a very good place to start if you're looking at, should I grade it? How much is my copy worth? So first things first, the price charting, as you can see here, is very useful. This allows us to sort of get a bird's eye view of the last 2 to 3 months of sales. Now, these are all the latest sales right here, near mint, near mint, near mint, so that's good. So if you pulled this card pack fresh, most likely your Umbreon falls under this category of near mint. As I said before, that is the one downside of TCG Player. Near mint is the best possible designation. You cannot label your card as mint on this website and still sell it. The near mint holofoil, we have 514, 450 and 445 as our last 3 sales. Our market price is listed right here as $479.50, which seems about in line with the last 3 sales as well. But we can check out more sales history. So we can see here, that's a moderate play. So if you see a number lower, oops, there we go. If you see a number lower than the rest, make sure you scan over and check the condition and don't just mark that down. But luckily for this card, this is, and the reason I picked this card as an example is it's gonna have a lot of sales. Like I said, it's very popular. So this gives us a good range. So anywhere between essentially $450 and $500 appears to be what you would be able to sell this for near mint on TCG Player. It can help you when you're deciding, do I want to grade this card or do I have a copy that I would actually make more money just selling it right now? And that's sort of where this chart comes into play. Most of the sales here have been pretty consistent, like I said, between the $450 and $500 mark. There's always going to be a couple outliers here, but for the most part, that's what we seem to be looking at least in the last week and a half. Another place to check is Troll and Toad. Now, Troll and Toad is not a website I use as much because, unlike TCG Player, it does not have the sold listings that we were using. Umbreon, VMAX, alternate art. Here we go, the Umbreon VMAX Secret Rare. So all you get on Troll and Toad are what people are currently listing this for. This is moderate play, and that's still asking for $30. So we have 3 listings here. All of them are actually higher than what we saw on TCG Player. So again, Troll and Toad is definitely a very prevalent marketplace, but I feel like for most people in the United States, at least, TCG Player would probably be a better option. And then of course, can't talk about buying Pokemon cards without mentioning eBay. So we're gonna do the Umbreon VMAX alternate art. And we see here our first listing is at 500. We've got some graded cards here as well. Here's a raw card right now, 3 days left, and we are at 465. Now, the benefit to eBay as opposed to TCG Player, of course, is that with eBay, you actually get photos of the card you're bidding on, which is a massive advantage because, as I said, I see potentially a little something going on in that corner, something going on there. Maybe, honestly, it looks like just a rough cut from the factory. The centering looks a little right heavy, but honestly, they give you leeway on the back, so nothing too crazy. It is a little left heavy on the front as well. But we get to look at all of these things, whereas on TCG Player, most of those listings, as you can see, there's no photo attached, so you don't actually get to see the exact card that you're bidding on, and that is the advantage of buying on eBay as opposed to TCG Player. And honestly, this is why, personally, I use eBay more for looking at raw card sales. It's just TCG Player will have more sales history, chances are, but eBay, I get to actually look at the card and I can say, well, my card is perfectly centered, has absolutely no whitening, and could potentially get a Gem Mint 10 if graded. And so I can try to find a card on eBay that matches what my card actually looks like, as opposed to simply throwing it up on TCG Player, calling it near mint, next to a bunch of other cards that might not be as in good a condition as mine. So we see here 427, 425, 500 best offer accepted, 390 best offer accepted. However, this is coming from the United Kingdom. Always make sure you check out where the card is coming from, because you've got customs. There's a whole bunch of reasons why people simply won't pay as much if the card is being shipped from overseas. So always be sure to check that. We have one here at 630. Again, and he says it's flawless. And so let's see, maybe that is the case. The centering looks pretty good. Let's check the back. Yeah, so the back centering, I mean, as most grading companies will actually allow you up to 60-40, sometimes even 70-30 on the back centering. That's definitely within the parameters there. This is definitely a extremely mint card, which could explain the premium that somebody chose to pay for it. So like I said, these are all things to think about when you are selling your singles. Does your card look like that? Or does your card look like the one that sold for 427, which I'm going to go ahead and say probably looked a little different. And sure enough, I can see from the very beginning, way left heavy on the centering. You're definitely not going to get a 10 on that. Still a very nice card, of course. Let's see the back. There's a little white dot right there in the corner that was not there on the other card. And again, the centering definitely off on the back as well as the front. So there you go, that is a $200 difference, because as we'll go over when I go into graded cards, it does make a big deal, a big deal of difference. So 425, 427 is looking like our near mint price, which is fairly close to TCG Player. Now, of course, the Umbreon VMAX Alt Art, there are private markets such as Instagram, Facebook, apps like Whatnot, where unless you're actually in the room or a very active member of the community, you will not necessarily know what a sale price is unless you're actually there watching it get auctioned off. Now, the downsides to eBay is, as I said, if you're not aware of what you're looking at, you can be led astray. So, you've got this 427, 425, and you might not understand why it's the 630. It does require you to do a little digging and also use some common sense. Does it look like a fake bid? A lot of the times if you see only one bid on screen, I'm hesitant to give that sale too much credibility. to be honest. 19 bids. Now I believe that that is an actual sale price. $429, I'll believe that by it now. We've just seen prices that are right in that range. That's why when I saw the 630, I had to look at the card because it does seem high. And always, if you are currently buying a card, don't be afraid to ask for more photos on eBay. It is very easy to hide flaws on a card with photos. The photos make you feel confident, but it is a double-edged sword because the person taking the photos could be taking them from a certain angle to hide whitening or potentially hide a corner bend or a scratch or something like that. So don't be afraid to ask for more photos on eBay. That is sort of, I guess, the one downside to the photos on eBay is you can be lulled into a false sense of security. Let's say we have our Umbreon. We've done our research. We've looked at Troll and Toad, we've looked at TCG Player, and we've looked at eBay. So we have a good idea of what our card is now worth, $425 to $500, depending on how perfect our card looks. So let's say our card looks like it could be a 9 and maybe even a 10. Once again, we'll start with eBay. And what I would say, guys, is always assume that your card is going to get a 9, maybe a 9.5. Do not ever assume it's going to get a 10. Unfortunately, we are not professional graders. And so therefore, it is not our call whether or not our card is going to 10 or not. You might disagree with the grader, but at the end of the day, it is their job and they look at a lot of cards. So always plan for the 9. So let's see, we have the PSA 9 at $450. We've got a $452, a best offer accepted at $550. That's probably going to be accepted at around the same price. So $450 seems to be the going rate here. We've now seen 3 different sales. We have one at $500. We have the Japanese version, so make sure you're paying attention. Japanese Umbreon, which of course is harder to hit and so therefore goes for a premium. So we could comfortably say that we're right in the $450 to $500 range, which essentially is what we would be getting for this card raw. And consider the PSA turnaround, and maybe that's no longer worth it for you. However, let's see if we wanted to grade at CGC. Always good to check multiple places. So we've got a $455. 2 bids, but I will believe that that is a real auction because the price seems to be right sort of in that range. We have one more at $500 on the 23rd. It was a good day for Moonbreons. $455 on December 14th. And a best offer accepted December 5th. And on December 1st, we have a $600 straight up sale. And honestly, for this, because it's a modern card, I'm not gonna go past December 1st. Anything older than that, I would consider to probably not be accurate current market information. Going back older than a month, you're getting into some iffy territory as to whether or not that comp still holds up, particularly when it's a card like this that is constantly being bought and sold. Obviously, certain vintage cards, certain rare cards, exclusive cards, maybe a sale from 2 to 3 months ago is still valid because maybe it's the only one that's been sold in the last 6 months. I'd say $450 is about what you can expect to get for your 9. After shipping and grading fees, that's about the same price. So in this case, unless I was sure my Umbreon was going to get a 10, I probably would just sell it raw. Now there's other places you can check for sold comps. This is my personal favorite. This is a website called 130 Point, and it actually checks PWCC, Golden, and eBay all in one go. So this is gonna be, let's see, CGC Umbreon VMAX. So here we have a 9.5 best offer accepted, which actually was a $525 sale. Now here's the benefit of this website is if you were to go to eBay, you would simply see best offer accepted at $630. Here, we actually get to see what that price was. So these are the sales all on eBay essentially. Not seeing any on PWCC that are the cards that we want. So it doesn't look like PWCC actually has sold this card recently, but let's go check it out just so I can show you how in case you want to do it on your own. So PWCC does not work like eBay. With PWCC, you actually need to sign in. I am already signed into my PWCC. And what you're gonna wanna do, you're at PWCC's website, you go to research, PWCC sales history. We know they don't have the Umbreon. We will check to be sure. I bet you maybe a PSA 10 has sold. Who knows? Maybe the CGC didn't sell, but the PSA 10 did. Okay, here's a PSA 10, but this is all the way back in June. Not anything recent on PWCC. Luckily though, there were a lot of eBay sales to give us plenty of information, but just in case we wanted to cross-check ourselves, you can do this with anything. Gold Star Mew. We'll say PSA. How about a Gold Star Mew? So here we go. And again, the Gold Stars too, they don't get sold nearly as often as a Umbreon does, as a Umbreon VMAX, so always be checking the dates of the sold listings. However, like I said, this is a vintage card. It's extremely rare, so you're not going to see quite as much price fluctuation with cards like the Pikachu Gold Star, Mew Gold Star, Mewtwo Gold Star. These are going to be cards that will consistently sell high as they are in a lot of demand, and quite frankly, there's not a lot of cards out there to be graded. It is a very hard card to find raw. You can also use golden heritage auctions. Heritage is like PWCC, you do need a login for that. And then of course you have to consider the private sales as well on Instagram, Facebook, sometimes on Whatnot as well. The advantage there is that you can get some very good deals depending on who you're buying from, but you're also losing a bit of seller protection or buyer protection. So that is something to be considerate of. You don't have nearly as much leverage as you do with PWCC or eBay that comes with some sort of guarantee, some sort of protection for you if the item you receive isn't correct or was not described accurately. Whatnot is a very nice sort of in-between where it has seller and buyer protections. Unfortunately, no sales history yet, but you at least do have some recourse as well. And then of course you have eBay and TCG Player. eBay, really, really good for graded cards. And obviously too, you know, you can get into Thom, which none of this information is going to be on TCG Player because none of these cards exist on TCG Player. So, you know, all these cards are being sold right now. I might even jump in on some of these. I absolutely love Thom. eBay is actually going to be one of the only places that you can find quite a lot of sales data on more niche collectibles like this, Bondi as well. Of course, Bondi will bring up toys as well. So yeah, guys, so this is how you do your research and check whether a card is worth grading, whether maybe you should just sell it raw. Like I said, the Moonbreon right now, I think is probably just a one to sell raw, unless your centering is perfect and you've got great edges, great corners, and you're very confident in your ability to assess your own cards. So that is it for today, guys. By all means, guys, go to our website. It's goingtwice.com. You can check out our blog. If this video is just too much information all at once, that's okay. We have a bunch of different grading articles all right here for you. We have the text club if you want to get any updates as to offers that we're doing with our grading services, our snack pack, anything like that. Join the text club, or you can at least get on the email list. We're doing promotions all the time, so by all means check that out. And if you're not following our YouTube and you're still watching at this point, please hit the subscribe button. I'm gonna be doing videos on all of these different articles as well as some future content as well. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this has been useful. Have a wonderful rest of your week.